thank you guys all for coming out, and it's so good to see all your lovely faces out here. This is one of my favorite times of the week when we get together and get to see each other's living and work area combined. So I appreciate y'all coming out. This is a big event for us. This is one of my favorite panels. I started, I think, as an idea way back in the day, as when we were doing our conference, as like stories of coordinators and telling the stories of the people who about breaking in and surviving and clawing their way to the middle or the top, wherever you end up. So when Hunter was talking about doing this panel, we were super excited, and so I wanted to kind of jump in and do an intro. My name is Joel High. I'm the president of the Guild of Music Supervisors, and was one of the founding members of the Guild. And it's an all-volunteer group where, we have a board of 11 people who volunteer their time to kind of help better the situation of everybody in the sync community. So we appreciate everybody joining with us, whether it is as full members or as friends of the Guild, whatever it is, and just joining with the community here. So this is, again, like a very exciting panel for us. We're very much an organization about helping the people as they get started, because it's hard. When I started doing this, back in the mid 90s, there was no university, classes on how to do this. You basically learned from the generosity of the people who came before you, and you kind of would go to them and ask questions about how to do different processes and what do you do in these situations. And in this community, it's always been very generous and open. And so this is also a way of us to kind of give back to people who are coming up so that they not only have a way in, but do it right, because this is one of the founding principles of the Guild of Music Supervisors, is that sometimes it's easy to call yourself a music supervisor, but the job is actually really hard. And so it takes a lot of skills, a lot of training to do it right. And you don't get it right on the first time, but if you ask the right questions with the right people, including the people who are on this panel, hopefully you'll get steered in the right direction and won't make too bad of a mess of it. So I started out, like I said, doing music supervision back in the mid 90s. My first film was Chairman of the Board, starring Carrot Top. It was I think one reviewer called it a putrid wave of experimental nonsense. And it's all been downhill for me. So, everybody's got to get started somewhere. I think I did 7 Leprechaun movies in my career, and, you just keep going and trudging through. So that's kind of my intro. Like I said, this community is all about engagement and involvement and learning from each other. And, we appreciate everybody who joins as a friend of the Guild or as a full member, because, it is tough to become a real full member of this intentionally, because we want to have it, the GMS after your name to mean something. So, and I see people from GMS East are out there, so represent. And so at this point, I'd like to hand off to Lindsay Wolfington, who's one of my fellow board members and is actually in a very important position, because she's the board member working on the education committee, which is about, outreach to universities, working with interns, and also the conference whenever we start doing that again. So without further ado, I'd like to present my fellow educator, Lindsay Wolfington.
Hi guys, thanks Joel. How do I follow Carrot Top, man? But yeah, this type of panel is always really cool, and part of the reason I'm interested in education is it's fun to give back. And I happen to teach music supervision at USC, so it's also part of my job. But one thing when I bring in panelists that I think is fascinating is that there's no one way into this business. And as Joel said, even if you took my class, there's not one way into this business. So I think we're in for a treat to hear some different perspectives, some different pathways. And one thing I want to say to anyone interested in this field is that it's not like, you hear about the title of music supervisor, but it's really a world of music for media. And it includes the people who pitch to us and represent artists and writers. It includes music supervisors for film, TV, ads, brands, trailers. So there are a lot of ways to get into this world, and it's a really great community. we love doing events like this. If anyone is interested in helping us coordinate education initiatives, we would love some new members. So please reach out to us if you're a guild member or a friend of the guild. We'd love your help on the education committee. You can email admin@guildofmusicsupervisors.com or reach out through our newsletters and website. And we hope to get you involved. And so without further ado, I'll pass it over to Executive Director of the Guild, Hunter George, to moderate our panel.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lindsay and Joel. And thank you for the panelists for joining in, as well as the attendees. We're very excited about having you all. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my name is Hunter George. I'm the Executive Director of the Guild of Music Supervisors. I also have worked on a number of projects in music supervision, but I also have a background in composing and licensing. So, and we'll talk a little bit about, I guess, how I got into this place and what differentiates me from some of my colleagues and so on and so forth. Just to touch a few things, I was inducted into the Recording Academy's Grammy Next Class of 2019 as a music producer. I worked under John Houlihan for a number of projects. John Houlihan has supervised almost 100 or over 100 films, Deadpool, John Wick series, Shape of Water, all the way dating back to Austin Powers. And I worked under Christopher Lennertz, the composer who worked on The Boys and Lost in Space series. And then I was originally kind of exposed to music supervision by Dave Jordan. I was a sneaker salesman and a marketing director at a sneaker company. And Dave happened to come into my store one day, and you know, over time, the rest was history. And he was kind enough to kind of get me my first internship. And in addition to me going to the Los Angeles Recording School, that's kind of an abbreviated version of what got me on this path. I'd like to introduce the panelists here. And the first one is Rachelle Jean-Louis, who is the music supervisor on the Lovebird series. She is an artist manager as well as an A&R, and has worked on Boomerang for BET, The After Party for Netflix, LeBron James's I Promise on Quibi, and Warriors of Liberty City on Stars, and prior to that, she was working on Ballers and for HBO and Shooters. Next up is Garrett Mcelveer. He's part of the team at Super Music Vision, originally under Thomas Goljevich. And his supervision credits include Gentified on Netflix, SEAL Team on CBS, Paradise Lost on Spectrum, Coyote for Paramount, and The Tick on Amazon. And then previously worked under Thomas for Better Call Saul and Love on Netflix and a number of other things. And he'll get into that speaking as a coordinator and then moving into a supervisor. Next up is Jason Lee. He's a film and TV creative for Peer Music. Jason's responsible for kind of basically placing songs for Peer Music writers into video games, sports, films, TV series, as well as new business ventures. Romero Mosley currently works as a music coordinator for APM Music. In addition to his sync experience, Romero has worked alongside a number of Grammy-winning artists and is awarded in music composition and recognized at a number of major music publications, as well as has a bit of experience as a music coordinator on the supervision side as well. Next up is Patrick Clancy, the Director of Music and Creative at Lyric House. He is responsible for basically sync and licensing and developing their artist roster and writer roster. Briana Beauvoir currently works as an artist manager at Helvetica Music. Her roster includes Gothic Traffic, Jane Holiday, and Ava B. Ross, in addition to her work alongside the Guild of Music Supervisors since its founding. And, you know, her and I worked pretty closely together before she got her experience as manager. And then Justin Lewis, finally, he currently works at Vans doing global music marketing for the company Music Pillar. prior to that, he worked directly in sync at Format Entertainment as a music coordinator. So now that I've gotten into all of that, I kind of want to dive more deeply into kind of your individual experiences and kind of get more into what you do day to day. I'll start with Rachelle and basically ask the question, how you got your start and when did you kind of realize this is what you wanted to do to pursue your career?
Wow. Hey, everybody. So glad to see all of you and, to be on this panel with some amazing, amazing people. My path was definitely not linear, so I can speak a little bit to the fact that I had no idea what music supervision even was. I was going to college at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I was doing an internship at XXL, actually, so music journalism. I was trying to find any way into the music business. I was watching shows like How to Make It in America and Entourage, and One Tree Hill was a huge show that I love. So Lindsay Wolfington on here, I have been looking up to you for years. So that everything you did on that show is amazing. And I started to look into that. I was watching shows and hearing music and hearing bands that I loved and, seeing them represented. And that's when I started to research like, what is that? How do I get into that? I ended up cold emailing Scott Venner, who is the music supervisor that's known for doing Entourage. He does Ballers now. And I had been working with an artist. He was looking for music for some show and just put up his email and said, hey, send me music. So I sent him an email and just sent him some music and said, hey, I love what you do. I don't know anything about how to get in, but I would love the opportunity. And I basically was emailing him for maybe 2 years, sometimes with responses, sometimes without, and ended up coming out to LA to visit a friend to try to find jobs because I'm from the East Coast as well. And while I was out here, I ended up emailing him and just said, hey, I'd love to meet. And that's literally how my job started. He was willing to meet with me, and he happened to be right on the precipice of working on Ballers, and just said, hey, if you have any music that you want to send me that I should be considering for this, just feel free. And we just kept the dialogue open. So I had no idea that this was even a job. It wasn't something that was taught in our course curriculum at school. So for anybody that's on here that's looking to get into music supervision, especially that looks like me and doesn't even know that it's a field to get into, like, we have to be pretty crafty. That's just the way that this industry is built, unfortunately. So I think that is something I really wanted to get out. I ended up working with Scott on the first 2 seasons of Ballers as a coordinator. So I would come in every day pitching music for scenes. There were a lot of times I was thrown into situations to just, find the right music. And I know that a lot of coordinators don't have that opportunity. So I was afforded that. And I ended up leaving working with Scott and went over to Keir Lehman, who now works on Insecure. He's amazing, great friend of mine, great guy, and was trying to learn, music clearances and try to find some kind of foothold. It was really, really hard. It still is very hard as a freelance music supervisor that's not working at a company, especially because the whole ethos behind how you can get a job is if you have experience. But unfortunately, to build that experience, you would have to be working at, a company potentially as a coordinator for years and hopefully be promoted. So a lot of the jobs that I've had, I've been very lucky with my own networking with directors or, just asking for help or getting calls from other supervisors that are working on shows that, maybe they don't know the music as well as I would. And I've been lucky in that scenario, and I'd love to talk about that further.
Yeah, we'll touch on that transition period that you went through. I think a number of us have gone through it or are currently going through it. So
yeah, absolutely. So that's basically that's how I got here. Definitely wasn't linear. It was pretty tough, but I'm very happy to be here. And yeah.
Sweet. And then I'll kind of move over to Garrett, who has kind of probably a similar background, and let him touch on working under Thomas and how he got into that side of the business as well.
Yeah, great to see everyone. My name is Garrett McElver. Like Hunter said, I work at a company called Super Music Vision with Thomas Golubic. And as a student in high school, even, I was interested in filmmaking, and I loved television shows. And even at a younger age, my mom always joked that I was like a 12-year-old with a favorite director, and was always like really passionate about filmmaking and television production. Learning all that, considered going to school for filmmaking, realized pretty quickly that it involved a lot of subjects that weren't as exciting to me as just being a part of the project. I didn't have the passion for learning about electrical work on set and being on set all the time and things like that. So I ended up, at the same time I was playing guitar, I was playing in bands, I was a musician with lots of friends. I ended up going to community college for my AA degree to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. Studied recording engineering for a while, thought I might do that. And then I realized again, I wasn't really passionate about being in the studio all the time. It wasn't where my heart was. And I ended up going to Cal State Northridge for my bachelor's degree, where I just studied a pretty broad music industry studies. It gave me a lot of introduction to a lot of things. I was sort of exploring what I might want to do. And while I was there, started to realize in some of my classes and some of the guest speakers we had, that there was this job of music supervisor that I always sort of imagined it was a job, because like Rachelle, I was obsessed with One Tree Hill, and I was like, how did they use these bands that I've heard of? Like, they're naming episodes after Explosions in the Sky, and they're naming episodes after like these like emo bands that I'm obsessed with, and I'm seeing the honorary title perform on camera. And so I was like, that's somebody's job to be a part of that process. And when I started meeting and hearing a little bit about it in school, it was like, oh, cool. How do I get involved in that? And one of my guest speakers was a man named Ron Sobel, who's a now retired entertainment attorney. And I ended up working with him and his law partner, Steve Winogradsky, at their company while I was in school. I started as an intern, just going once a week just to learn about entertainment law. And they had a creative department that represented some independent, musicians and artists. They were administrators for a couple more prominent songwriters. And I was just in the room, and I kind of stayed in the room for a long time, for like a year while I was in school. And then one day the head of the creative department decided to quit. And then suddenly I was the most qualified person in the room to understand all the relationships with the artists they had. I'd been around for a while, so I ended up working there while still in school. Learned all about pitching, licensing, all the law, all the copyright, all the paperwork, all the terms, the business portion of it, and a little bit of the pitching and the licensing world of it, and realized pretty quickly that in this buyer-seller relationship, I felt more confident as a buyer in terms of being able to evaluate content and quality of music, and not just to have an opinion on the songs, but really to match them up with the scenes. And I often found myself, when a supervisor would not use our songs, I'd kind of be like, yeah, I get it. They don't really make sense for the scene you described. I'm just trying to sling the artist that I'm representing. And then still in school at this point, Thomas Golubic spoke at my school, and I was able to connect with him. He was very kind and let me pick his brain over the phone a couple of times, stayed in touch. I asked him if I could intern for him, and he said no. So I asked him if I could ask him again in like 6 months, because I didn't really want to give up. And I was a huge fan of 6 Feet Under, and he was working on Breaking Bad, and I was a huge fan of that. And I was like, I feel like the creative process that I'm craving to learn in the education, he was doing the things that I admired a lot, as well as, many other shows that I've been a fan of. So I was able to reach out again several months later, and he just happened to be taking on a new project. It happened to kind of be serendipity of timing. I also was able to position myself very well in saying that he didn't need to educate me on the licensing component and the clearance component, that I was actually pretty well-versed in the world of licensing, having worked at this entertainment law firm for now about 2 or 3 years. And I was really just there to learn his process and the creativity. In addition, I was a young person who knew how to fix his website and set up his stereo. And so he started thinking, oh, this is a person who can bring value to the company. I joke about the stereo, but bring value to the company in terms of technology and expanding on the knowledge that his team had and the ability to finish projects that he had been long wanting to start. So suddenly I was bringing bringing more to the team than was previously there in some kind of way. And was as a coordinator part-time for a while, working at both of those companies for about a year, and then was able to transition to full-time with Thomas. And I've been there about 7 years now. I just hit 7 in this past April. So that's been my journey, and there's, more to get into the transition, but it's been a very lucky, door opening, meeting the right people, but finding the, opportunities and being resourceful to take advantage of them and to connect and to, be as thoughtful and articulate as I could be when reaching out and connecting and trying to, be in the room. So that way, when the opportunity arose again, I was, again, a qualified person in the room.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the resourcefulness aspect. I think that lends its hand a lot as far as, everyone wants to be a coordinator, everyone wants to do clearance or supervision, but sometimes you've got to find yourself doing jobs and things that aren't under that umbrella, and that oftentimes has more value than the actual wanting to be a music supervisor itself. Next, I'll take it over to Patrick, who has a really broad experience coming from a background at ASCAP and then moving over to West One and then now landing at Lyric House. So maybe you could talk about that journey a little bit. I know we're reaching about 4 p.m., so if we could try to keep it to about 3 minutes per, and then we'll kind of move into some topics.
Yeah, I think I can try to tackle that. Hi, I love seeing a lot of friends and colleagues and peers in the chat, and it's really good to see everybody. I'd love to be on this. My background is somewhat similar to Garrett in the very beginning. I just love music. I wanted to play in as many things. I'm a bass player. I can play bass okay, and everything else I can't play very well at all. But I just did everything I could to be in bands and tried to tour even for a little bit. And I love that side. In high school, I wanted to try to explore to be an engineer as well. And so I went to community college during my senior year as night school to try to get a head start. I just loved that side, but I realized it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And I did not want to tour for a living. It just wasn't cut out for me. There's other people that do a very good job at it. It just wasn't my capacity. And I thought about what I really loved about all the different things that I did in music. And a lot of it was connecting the dots. I loved to be able to, in a way, you kind of are always selling yourself somehow. And I always felt like I really did well being excited for something and really passionate about something I believed in. And I did everything I could to try to make that happen. However that was. That's the most condensed form of the feelings that I liked from it. And I also loved helping people in general, especially coming from even the small amount of touring or the small amount of playing I did compared to career musicians. I just wanted to help them out. I wanted to help people that were creating music. And so I first went into CSUN. Garrett and I were in the same classes together. That's where we met. And a lot of other people that are in this industry that I just love seeing in emails together. And we did everything we could. I did everything I could to, participate in every project, try to take as many leadership roles. I bugged my teachers to death. I just wanted to intern everywhere I could. I had a few different internships, including because of Garrett giving me a chance and meeting Steve Winograsky and Ron Sobel. I was able to intern there for a little bit, and I got to really cut my teeth on what it meant to be a publisher, and also to hear Steve and Ron come into our room when we're working on things to propose this crazy licensing question or copyright issue that they're dealing with, and for us to work it out. And so I really loved doing that and being a part of that. And so when I was graduating, I was trying to think of where I wanted to have an internship, and I really liked the idea of ASCAP. I had a lot of friends there already, and I just wanted to explore that. I knew that all they were really doing was helping people. They were making sure everybody was getting paid. And there was a creative aspect to it that was more than just doing the accounting and making sure, statements are happening. You had a chance to really connect with the people that you represented. And so I did everything I could to volunteer for the expo or whatever, so I can get in touch with that team and really earn my place there if I could. and I had a chance to work as an intern for the summer after I graduated, and there was an opening in the film and TV department, and I happened to be helping Sean Lamone and the film and TV team whenever there's different events and stuff happening over the summer, and I did everything I could to try to get an interview, and they were nice enough to give me that chance. So I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about just working in general as like a first job, but also how much of the industry really revolves around so many different parts. Eventually, I realized that wasn't the type of job, the type of work that I loved, and I kept gravitating towards the sync community. That a lot of different friends would introduce me to different people in this world. I would go to different shows and social situations, and we're all just like hanging out. And it wasn't a networking situation. It was more like we were all just getting to know each other. And I just kind of loved it. I loved the idea that you could be in this part of the world where you could either pitch music to get into a project that you love, that you're a fan of, or if you're on the supervision side, you're really in like and balancing out all these different aspects just to like make the project work on time, on budget. But I really gravitated towards representing a catalog, again, because what I loved at ASCAP, about helping as many people as I possibly could, and also still having some creative time with people. And so with a lot of friends' help and helping open doors, I was able to just like push as hard as I could to get different interviews, to talk to people, ask questions, and just like try to find my way. And the first company that really gave me a shot in the sync world was West One. I was kind of, representing sync on behalf of a team that was relatively new from the UK, about a year or so in. And so I had to go, knock down some doors and like bug people. And there's a lot of people even in attendance that have all given me a chance to like go pitch a brand new library, which is very hard to do. And I really loved what I got from that. And it was it was great. So I went from there. I got an opportunity to be at Primary Wave. And I had to take it because that opened a whole new door of representing traditional publishing, but also Primary Wave does so many other things. They're just like so much more than just a publishing company. They're marketing. They look at things like marketing and a label team. And so I wanted to like explore that. And I had that for a while. And then Lyric House, I was approached by Lyric House because they were looking for somebody. Their last director of sync left for another creative job. And I couldn't say no because it made me realize how much I loved working in an intimate way with a really truly independent company that works with people just so hands-on that now I'm here and I love it. I love being in this community with everybody, and it took a lot of work, but I'm I feel like I'm in a good place, and I've always learned something from every different place that I've had a chance to be involved in and to do what I can to like help out in whatever job I was doing.
Yeah, and I'd say too, to add to that, you take that stuff, even the good times and the hard times, or the skills you've learned at jobs, whether they went well or not, but you take a lot of that education and tools that you've gathered and apply them directly, like to your next gig or in future gigs, and things kind of tend to make a little bit more sense with hindsight, or you end up at a place where it all just kind of works out in the end.
I've learned so much, and I am very much in debt to every opportunity that I've had and every person that's helped open that door. It's never because of just me, like bulldozing through the industry trying to find my way in. It was all of these other people that gave me chances and gave me opportunities to learn from those different situations. So nothing was ever bad. It was always like I learned something new about myself, and I tried to do the best I could in each situation I was in. And it was because of those people that gave me those chances. So I appreciate that.
Nice. So we'll move along with Jason, and you can talk a little bit about how you got in, maybe a little bit about your school experience, and then tell us a little bit more about peer music as well. You're on mute, Levi or Angela.
Got it. Yeah. So how I got in was, sorry, I'm like blown away by everyone's story, and now I feel like I have a first draft to everyone's like New York bestseller story. But
no, come on.
Yeah. Well, so I first went to, my music story is like a little bit all over the place. I've kind of always known, maybe since high school, that I've always wanted to be in music industry, and you could probably tell from how pale I am. I don't go outside. I just watch movies all day, and like movies and music were like my two big things, and I always wanted to kind of be in it, and kind of was aware of like the idea, like there must be something in this. So like it was something I always wanted to pursue, but like my career always kind of zigzagged around. I first went to Cal Poly Pomona, where I did their music industry program for 2 years, and while I was there, I put on shows with a bunch of other artists, a lot of hip hop focused events. And then from there, I transferred over to USC, where I also did the music industry program. And from there, I kind of started to get the idea of like what was available within the sync world, and kind of see where it is that I wanted to fit, and just kind of understood what was actually available. So from there, I took an internship in the licensing department at Warner Music, where I kind of not in the sync licensing, just licensing in general. And I kind of got an idea of how licensing works and clearance works. And shout out to Charles Schoonover, who was my first intern supervisor, and still a very close friend who I look up to when it comes to industry guidance. And then after I graduated, I was a little bit all over the place as well. I went into royalties at BMG, and then from BMG, I went over to Peer Music and was doing royalties there as well. And after like doing royalties for a couple of years, I kind of was like, all right, I have to like make a move if I actually want to make a move. So I kind of started becoming a little bit more proactive about what I wanted to do. And
right.
The year that I moved into sync was when Guild of Music Supervisors did their first conference for the students. And I was like, well, this is a thing. I've like tried other things. Maybe this will be a thing that'll be helpful. So I went, and I saw my peer sync team there, who all noticed me, and I was like, oh, you're interested in sync? I was like, yeah, I'm interested in sync. They're like, yeah, that's cool. And then they told me, we're gonna look to hire someone to the team. And I was like, that's great, let's talk. And that was really, just like fortunate of me that I went there and just kind of made my intentions known to the team, because otherwise, who knows if they would have made any kind of internal notification to the company, hey,
sure,
might be a thing. And so I went.
But also, you showed up at a thing, an extracurricular activity that was also kind of considered a community hangout. So it showed them that you're kind of one of the people. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And then I interviewed for the job, and pretty much, there was no bias towards my hiring. I mean, it helped that I knew the copyrights and the catalog already, and I had a little bit of a leg up, but they treated me like anybody else in the industry trying to apply for the job. I had to interview with basically every member of the team, president of the company. They really put me through, the gauntlet of the whole thing. And, I had worries, just because people talk about when you go into any kind of thing, people always kind of want to know that you can do the thing. The job descriptions always say like 2 to 3 years minimum doing the thing that before you enter the job. And I haven't really had direct sync experience, but once I kind of realized what the job was going to be, it isn't like just because you didn't weren't directly involved in sync prior to this, it doesn't mean you're like completely ignorant to it. Like I had licensing experience before, you know, we put on showcases for artists and music supervisors all the time. That's event production. I did event production.
Right.
We're doing marketing and marketing our catalog through playlists and, you know, sending that out to clients all the time.
Yeah.
I was an artist manager. I marketed artists. I know how Photoshop works.
It all kind of folds into one.
Yeah, it all folds into one. So like, even if you take a weird route to get there, if you really kind of think about it, you could probably connect the dots as to how your past skills apply to what's coming, you know, in your future.
Sweet. Yeah. So, and I would say the same thing. It's not only what skills you've learned, but the people you meet along the way is like a huge factor. I'll go next into Briana and kind of talk about not only your work with the Guild, but in management. And, you know, I know you spent some time in London and how that might have, you know, changed your experience or your overall, like, maybe on an international level. So if you want to speak about your experience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Briana. And like Hunter said, well, how did I get started? So my dad is a musician. My mom worked in A&R and did some independent music supervision as well growing up. So I kind of always knew that I would love to get into this industry. So as soon as I was old enough, at about 16, I just threw myself into every internship or volunteering opportunity that I possibly could in many different aspects of the industry. And that led me to begin volunteering with the Guild as soon as that was founded, I believe around 2011. Mm-hmm. And I was so hungry and so eager to just be around the supervisors and learn, you know, what they were doing. And I just found it so fascinating that there was no job that was too small. I was doing, you know, whether it was helping with events or providing music or whatever they needed, I was down for. So really did that and got to spend a lot of time around the supervisors and hear their stories and became really passionate about helping support them through the Guild. So from there, I went to university in London, as Hunter mentioned, and I studied audio engineering and production. So I was DJing at the time, and that directly kind of helped me understand the tech of music. Mm-hmm. And it also kind of solidified my love for being in the studio. But at the same time, I quickly learned that wasn't necessarily the lifestyle I was looking to have. So from there, I graduated from university, came back to LA, and reached out to an old mentor of mine who was Thomas Skolovich, who Garrett and Hunter both mentioned. And we spent a lot of time working closely my earlier years volunteering with the Guild. So I reached out to him, we had lunch, and he had just become the president of the Guild and was looking for some help. So he brought me onto the team where I worked underneath him and worked really closely with Hunter. And I have to say, Hunter, you definitely helped to shape kind of that world and guide me and taught me all the ways, the ways of the land there. So that was really great. And then
I want to mention also, this wouldn't happen, this podcast or a lot of our events without Bree, Romero, a couple others that were heavily involved in the founding of these. Garrett is one of them for sure. Garrett was on the first ever conference as well. So I just want to mention that, you know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I was doing that, working with Thomas, working with the Guild, and really fell in love with, supporting music supervisors. And I feel like that was a shift for me of, okay, I don't want to necessarily become a supervisor as a profession, but I would love to continue to help supporting this industry and, you know, these amazing, talented humans. So through that, I was reconnected with another mentor, Mark Nicholas, who at the time was leaving Glassnote. He was the head of West Coast A&R at Glassnote, and he was leaving that position to begin consulting, like doing A&R consulting for them as he was launching his own independent management company. So I was also very intrigued with that kind of route. And so I began working for him first as his assistant and then a day-to-day manager, and then a manager as I am today. So I was doing the Guild events and volunteering and helping Thomas with the Guild and also jumping into management kind of simultaneously. And I realized that the passion I had to help support supervisors was the same passion that I had to help support my artists. So I definitely have taken that through line of working with the Guild into what I'm doing today.
Sweet. And that's kind of a similar story, I think, for Romero, who kind of started on the same side of maybe working, did some stuff with the Guild, did some coordinating, and then ultimately kind of ended up making the jump over to APM Music. And so maybe you can talk about that transition as well.
Sure. Much like a lot of the panelists, and you're remiss if I didn't say thank you, Hunter, and thank you for everyone just joining us today. It's kind of a full circle moment for me, because like a lot of the panelists, I didn't have a linear direction straight into music supervision. Born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, I never knew the word sync or even the world of music supervision existed. So I just knew that I was passionate about music. I mean, I played in bands. I have a background in music production. I work with various artists, but just to actually be able to put music to picture and it become a career in a way that you can monetize and make a living, it was far reach until I actually had the opportunity to relocate to Los Angeles in 2015. And in that relocation, I mean, just wound up meeting different composers. And when you're in and out of studios and working with artists, people talk. So the word music supervision would come up from time to time. So I started doing a little bit of research on my end. And along that way, much like everybody else, I had mentors to kind of give me tidbits. And throughout that process, I would reach out via Instagram, via email, cold calling, whatever the case, just to any and everyone who would be willing to share information about music supervision. One of my mentors at the time, I wound up obtaining, well, let me first say this. I wound up reaching out to a music supervisor via DM, say, hey, I wanted to have lunch. I want to do a coffee meeting, something. They said, no, we can't have a meeting with you. But if you meet us at the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall, we'll be having a panel, much like the panel we have today. And on that panel, it was Thomas Galjevich, who was the president at the time. It was Yvette Matoyer, Carolyn Richardson, quite a few other people. So after the panel,
Morgan Rhodes was probably there.
Yep, that was who I actually reached out to. She said,
Briana was there in the house, in the building.
That was one of the cornerstones of me getting started, where I wound up introducing myself to all the panelists, and even to Thomas after that panel discussion was over. Wound up interning for Carolyn Richardson for a little while. During that time frame, I volunteered with the Guild. I just wanted to be in the room. So any event, I was there. I meant to make sure I can, help with registration. If it was curating the direction of the podcast, whatever it was, I just wanted to be of service. That was my whole thing. I've always just wanted to amplify the voices of storytellers through music, and, being a way to put music to picture through music supervision. It was like a dream come true. And I knew I had to be in the space, have these conversations, and just to be in the room in order for it to take place. So that internship wound up turning into another one with Ashley Newmeister at True Music, which introduced me into a music coordinating role, and where I worked on games people play. And I sat in on a couple of spotting sessions for American Soul, which I'm sure we're going to get, into that aspect of it. But throughout that process, it's not like I just worked my ass off or anything like that. I've had mentors throughout the way that have been, of assistance, and that have opened the door, like Thomas Galjevich, and the Guild has been a support that actually transformed me into an opportunity that presented itself at APM. I saw a music coordinator role was made available, and I wound up applying for that. Actually, it was introduced to me through a friend of mine, and it kind of just everything that I had gone through in Cleveland, all of the production and everything that kind of helped develop my ear for music, kind of just led up to that point, to where I'm now, doing music coordinating and asset delivery, and also curating playlists with APM. It just all came full circle, but it came full circle because there were those that opened the door and provided information, and just were an asset to me along the way, because music supervision, the word of sync, seemed like such a secret society, you know what I mean? And it seems like such, far reaching, and you have to know someone and that sort of thing. And I wasn't normally the guy that's out and about and Mr. Networking and that sort of thing. It really just boiled down to having my eyes set on it and just reaching out to people, you know what I mean? In person and online, in whatever way I could. I just wanted to, make sure I touched base with those that were in the game.
Yeah. And I think also, I would say your music production knowledge and skills help you, especially when it comes to sonically listening to music and metadata and all that stuff. And then I want to jump into Justin, who also kind of has a similar experience at working as a coordinator for one of the larger houses called Format Entertainment. And then Justin and I also share a background with the Grammy Next program, and talk about that, and then kind of talk about where you're at now with Vance.
Okay, for sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Lewis. I'll keep it as quick as I can. I studied opera performance in college in Ohio at University of Cincinnati in their conservatory. So the plan for me for like all of childhood up to through college was supposed to go into opera. So what I'm doing right now is something that I never thought I was going to be doing. I thought I was going to be on stage, but things happen, goals change. So as I left college, I came back to LA. I'm from here, native of Los Angeles. I started working at Warner Chappell doing mechanical licensing, which was not ideal for me. Coming from the background that I had, I was like, I don't feel comfortable being at the desk all day. I don't think this is for me. But I learned from as many people as I could in that environment, made as many relationships as I could. And then while I was there, I joined the Grammy Next program, like Hunter was saying. And I was paired with Julia Michaels, the music supervisor at Format. And she was like, who do you want to meet? I was like, I gave her a long list. One of the first people that I had the opportunity of meeting with was Keir Lehman. And I met with him, and he like basically offered me an internship. So I decided to push my schedule at Warner Chappell to start at like 6:30 a.m., 7 a.m. so I could end the day early. And then I would drive across town to his office. And I did that like every day for like a month and a half. And he and James, who was his coordinator at the time, he's a supervisor now, they showed me the very basics. And then I got an opportunity at Format, which Julia obviously helped me obtain. And I was there for like a year and 10 months, almost 2 years. Great experience, learned from Dave Jordan, Julianne, Julia, Trigga, Justine, all of them, some of the best supervisors in the industry, taught me everything that I needed to know. And then I moved over to Vans this year in the middle of the lockdown. So I haven't even actually met any of my coworkers or colleagues in person. It's all been all through Zoom. Yeah, I went over there in like March, something like that. And I've been there since. And now I'm doing global music marketing, which is obviously not what I thought I was going to be doing as well, but it fell into my lap and I decided to go ahead and try it out. And I have a very good feeling about it. So yeah, I just said yes to as many opportunities as I could, was myself in all environments, and just made as many connections and relationships as I could. And then stuff just started rolling. And this all happened within the last 3 years when I graduated. So yeah.
Nice. So I kind of want to touch on a few things. One of the things that really is a big question, especially for young professionals, like once they've got their internships, they got their first jobs, maybe you're getting your first credits, like that's path is fairly straightforward. And maybe I can ask this to Rachelle and Garrett. Once you started to get like your first credits, there's this transition period that you guys are probably either just getting through or kind of still in the process of getting through, where you might be getting your first supervisor gig, or you might even have a couple supervisor gig, but you might even find yourself still coordinating on some stuff. So maybe you could just quickly talk about that and tag team it on what that transition's been like and how you guys have been kind of processing that,
So the last coordinator job that I had was with Scott. And then after that, I was in Keir's office, but I didn't actually have a title. Like I was working to learn clearances because Scott doesn't do clearances. He outsources for that. And that's something that you need to know as a music supervisor is the actual legal, not just creative. Otherwise you're doing all the fun. So this is a bit of a tough question for me because I was out there, I was on my own. Like I was just trying to emailing every supervisor that I knew, like, hey, are there any jobs? Like, is there anything going on? And I think the first thing that I had out of Kira's office was the after party, which Robin Erding supervised.
Mm-hmm.
And she called me and was like, hey, you know, I need help on this. Are you down to do this as a music consultant? And so that was like the foray into music consultant role, which isn't necessarily the coordinator, but you're not getting paid as much as the supervisor. So there's that intermediary role. And at the same time, I had a Black agent reach out to me and say like, hey, you know, there's no representation, like barely any for Black supervisors. And I'm really trying to change that. He was at CAA at the time. His name is Drew. And he moved over to UTA, and he reached out to me just saying, you know, I know that this is hard. He met me through multiple friend circles and was just down to get in the mud with me and just say like, hey, like, you know, any meeting that I can set up for you to go to. And that wasn't even that helpful. It was really tough. One of the jobs and things that came up actually came through another friend of mine who it was like a friend of a friend of a friend has somebody that may be doing, you know, the score for Warriors of Liberty City, which is a docuseries, through Spring Hill, which is LeBron James's company. And docuseries, I mean, the budget definitely isn't that big, but it was an opportunity to get my first supervisor credit by myself. And so, of course, you know, saying yes. So that leap is really tough to make, I think, especially if you're not in a role as a coordinator for 2, 3, 4 years and able to rise up the ranks. You've been talking to directors, you've been talking to studio heads, like that was not there for me. And it still is hard even now, you know, unless I get one of those calls or I'm hitting somebody up and they say I have something that doesn't really exist. I don't know how helpful that is, but I'm just going to be real about the fact that that leap is still something that I take every day.
Yeah.
To try to get, you know, the next supervisor role. And
you're going to probably be doing that. You're going to probably be doing that for the next 20 years, you know, and I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing that I did, The Lovebirds on Netflix, like that's a supervisor credit. It gets easier the more that you have the credits to your name, because it is a catch-22. The more experience you have, the more jobs that you can say like, hey, I should get this too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that leap in between is definitely tough. You just have to make that decision after you've been coordinating for a certain amount of time to do it, to make that leap and say, hey, I'm a music supervisor. I'm doing all of these things, and you got to go for it.
Yeah. And I'd say to Garrett, you know, your experience may be a little different, but similar, but in that, like, you're working under a music supervision house that tends to get a lot of work. So, sometimes that might be a different story where maybe Thomas can't actively take on something and everyone's too busy, and maybe you kind of get it by way of just kind of catching the plates as they fall. You know, maybe you can speak on that, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, Rachelle articulated so wonderfully the challenges I think just any supervisor has as a whole, and the idea that you don't know where your next project's coming from, you don't know what you're going to get. I've been very lucky and privileged to be in a company for as long as I have, to work with Thomas, to work with Yvette Matoya, work with Michelle Johnson, who are also, you know, getting supervisor credits, and me coordinating where I could. And for that company, there was, you know, the right place, right time for my end, in terms of, you know, enough projects coming in where we could start expanding, tipping, you know, toes into the water of trying, you know, all letting us get different credits and work on different projects. But I will say part of it was earning and really working hard to get that trust from Thomas and from Yvette and from Michelle, to really put myself in a position where, you know, each of them, and in particular Thomas, were confident that, you know, I was going to represent him and his company in a way that was going to feel, you know, successful. And what's nice with the, you know, working with someone, you know, established and a veteran and a you know, well-renowned supervisor like Thomas, is that we can do things like co-music supervision credits, where it's both of our names, and he can kind of let me take the lead while he dives in. But even to that point, you know, the first one that I worked on, you know, came out of place of just pushing and really asking and setting goals and establishing those goals with him. And one of them that first came along was he was asked to help supervise on The Tick for Amazon. And that was a project that I really wanted to work on. And I was a huge fan of the the comic books as a kid and the cartoon series. And I wrote Thomas this whole long email being like, I have been a fan of this character since I was like a teenager. I literally have this lunchbox sitting right here from the Tick from the 90s. And so I wrote to him and I was like, I want to be a part of this. And he was like, I love the enthusiasm and the passion and the, let's see if this works out. And that did work out. And so now we've worked up to a point where I can take in new projects with him, sometimes solo, sometimes together. I'm still coordinating on things and just being on my end really flexible and understanding of the operations of the company and how I can be helpful to the company. Sometimes it benefits my career and sometimes it's just benefiting the company, but it's always benefiting the community and our company. And one of the other areas, that I'm still having to do on my own is that I can't also rely on another person for my own career. And at a certain point, I can't just, sit around hoping that I can, eat the scraps of what's left over. So I'm still connecting, I'm networking with producers and directors. And sometimes those come from places that you might not expect, In the example of the show Hentified that I worked on, that came from one of my best friends from high school who moved to Los Angeles with me on the same day. She started dating a man named Ashram, who was a producer. He's an upcoming television film producer. And he knew me through her. And he was like, hey, I'm working with a friend of mine who just needs to figure out how to clear a song for this web series he's making. And he knew where I was working. So I helped them clear the song and then worked with them a little bit on making sure that project as a digital series is just like a proof of concept web series. Worked with them and got to know them. And then by good fortune, and because they're awesome and they wrote and developed a really wonderful program, they got picked up by Netflix. It went to the series. And through, them and another line producer that I had met through, again, a friend of a friend who kind of put me in touch to help clear a song one time. I connected with a line producer who then happened to be working on Hentified. So I had a few people that I had been able to help on very small, that I did things for free just to, help clear a song here or there. They started doing this new TV series, had to interview, go up against anyone else who was in the room. And, because it was a great fit, because we really collaborated, because I was able to go in there and talk to them about their vision of their project and how I would help achieve their vision. They ended up giving me the opportunity to sort of solo supervise on Hentified. And, that's great. And we're getting another season, but I still don't know when my next solo credit will be. I don't know. And it's all just a matter of hitting at every angle I can within the company, trying to bring projects to the company and so forth.
Yeah, cool. And I want to touch on that in a second, but I want to also talk about the survey that we just put out. If we can maybe publish that, and then I want to touch on afterwards some of the things you were saying, Garrett. Cool. So it looks like 47% are interested in coordinating and supervising, 18% on the publishing and label side, 6% in management and marketing, 8% in sync and agency library, 22% music creator. And then as well, 45% of the poll is an entry level, 32 is a junior, and 23 is a senior. So that gives kind of an interesting perspective. One of the things that I want to touch on, and I'll field it to someone else, but from what Garrett said, is the idea of doing things per your job, or, for instance, with Thomas was subsequently being a supervisor and the president of the guild at the same time. So that impacted Garrett's world in a big, big way. And I know for sure. And Garrett was always a guy that would say, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, no problem. I'll get this to you today. I'll get it at the end of the day today, or whatever. And whenever it was a thing for the guild, it was, he saw the value, he saw the service. And I met all of you guys in some capacity through the guild or in service of the guild. And so I want to talk about that a bit because a lot of people are asking questions that are, how do I get a job or an internship, or how do I get an internship without being a student? Because once you're, a graduate, you can't really do internships. I think that a lot of folks have success stories in what they've done with the guild itself, and maybe helping out an event. We are a volunteer organization, so we rely heavily on volunteer help, especially for our events. And I know maybe hundreds of stories of individuals that have started out coming out of a school position or, maybe a little bit further along in their careers, but still kind of helping out when they can. And, maybe they met somebody at a guild event that ended up kind of changing that trajectory. Maybe I'll ask Romero because, I know specifically, or Briana, that has impacted you in a certain way. So maybe you can speak to that a bit on advice for, recent graduates or students trying to break in and figuring out how to navigate something like the Guild of Music Supervisors, Oh, sorry. Let's do Romero first, and then we'll go to Briana.
He's muted.
Yeah, he's got the mute factor.
All right, cool. We're good now. Yeah, the Guild has been extremely instrumental in my path. Like I said earlier, I found out about the Guild through a friend of mine. I guess you say a mentor, Brian Vickers, who's now a music supervisor over at Disney. Told me who the players were, told me about the Guild and some of the services that you guys were doing. And I think it was during the Nebula stage of one of the conferences. So everything from helping with registration and obviously with COVID going on now, the climate of the events are going to be a little bit different in the future.
Sure.
But there was no job too small. And I ultimately let Thomas know at the time I want to work towards music supervision, but I want to be in the room. So I'm willing to do everything from, if it was from checking coats at the doors to just using that as an example, to working audio visual in one of the rooms for a conference, just being of service. So that was, once I found out who, was instrumental in the Guild and touching base on that. And you have to put your ego, I guess is the best advice I could have as far as connecting with the Guild in any opportunity, any position, internship. Put your ego to the back if this is something you really want to do, because not everything is going to be immediately gratifying to what you could see, in the near or far future. But that was my path. I reached out, and the roles, they got cooler and cooler with the Guild. Like I said, I helped with curating one of the initial podcasts and putting that together, and met Hunter and a lot of other great Guild members. And it allowed me to constantly and regularly be in communication with other music supervisors and production companies and filmmakers and students. So it's just a community,
Another thing too is like Romero, like I was sending him event invites once he got it plugged in with me. And it's just one of those things that he would just show up to those events. And even after a while, he wasn't like just doing direct volunteer work, but he was showing up and engaging with the community. And I think that's enough as well. It's just, you're now meeting people, you're in the same room. It's a very concentrated group of professionals. And I think that that's another factor that, in addition to just volunteering, which is amazing for us, but, sometimes you do it, but sometimes you got to be in the room as well and just kind of be able to network and talk with people. So, and then I guess for Bree, she has an interesting perspective since she actually worked directly with the Guild. But maybe you could talk about, just to dovetail on that, like how the community that you've been exposed to has impacted your job now in management at Helvetica.
Yeah, definitely. I would say like advice to young people that are getting into the industry is to definitely be open-minded. Do your research, ask questions, find a mentor, but definitely be open-minded, because when I first started working with the Guild, I kind of had this clear idea of what I thought my life or career path would look like. And as I've mentioned, it's, completely taken a turn. Yeah. But everything that I have learned through the Guild, through volunteering, even doing small events, just kind of surrounding myself with those people, hearing their stories, understanding the industry a little bit better, that has directly helped me today. And specifically with the Guild, I now have the knowledge and understanding to go out and get syncs and licenses for my artists. And I kind of understand, or have a better understanding of what supervisors are looking for and how to kind of cut through, whether it's metadata or whatever, basically cutting through to make that process for my artists as smooth and easy and simple as possible.
Right. And then I guess I'll take it over to Jason and Patrick, coming from, a place where, there's folks that work directly with the Guild, but you guys also work directly with the Guild in that your companies represent as sponsors for the Guild. So with Pure Music and Lyric House, and then Patrick has always been a very heavy advocate for us. Just any company he goes to, he's just really about the community. He's about the engagement. So maybe you guys could talk about what your companies do, and then talk about how your interface with the Guild is impacted based on the companies you've been at or where you're at currently.
All you, Jason. You go first. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What was the first part of the question? What we do, right? And what Pure Music does, and then. Yeah, sure. So Pure Music is a publishing company, and I work in the sync department. And for anyone who doesn't understand what publishing is, especially in relation to sync, publishers represent the songwriters, whereas record labels represent the recording and the recording artists. So publishing deals with the melody and lyrics and the composition. So when you're playing for sync, you're getting a clearance from the publishing side and the master side, which would be the audio recording. So I work with the songwriters as a publisher. And then what was the second part of the question in relation to the Guild?
Yeah, just, how, with you or Patrick or Romero, how being a part of a company that's a sponsor of the Guild, you guys are actively attending our events or co-branding events, and, how that's impacted you guys, and or, how your realm of the community interfaces with music supervisors or with, the other affiliating bodies,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. The Guild of Music Supervisors and the events have always just kind of been a great way to be integrated into the community and get to know everyone's faces and just really feel like you're a member of like the entire operation. And the value of us, kind of being everywhere and meeting everybody is just having good connections with everyone in the industry, whether that's people on the film and TV side or music supervision side or just fellow co-publishers and labels. It just helps you do your job better when maybe your co-publisher has 50% of a song and you just want to be sure a song wants to be really clearable before you pitch it, and you just want to make sure there's no issues. You have a friend, like if I know Patrick controls one side of it or something, I can just call him up and be like, hey, I want to pitch it for this project. It's kind of wonky. Do you think you'll be okay for this, this, and this?
It happens all the time.
Yeah, like every day.
Tell me immediately.
It happens all the time.
It just makes you do your job easier and more confidently and efficiently. So that's kind of a big benefit for us being involved with the Guild as sponsors.
And now I guess for Patrick too, maybe, since Jason's explained the Guild aspect, maybe you can explain, firstly Lyric House and the kinds of work you guys do, but also talk about like showcases and how you're seeing the same people at these showcases that are also engaged with Guild, the Guild, and how that affects your guys' kind of ecosystem as well,
Yeah, well, first of all, I was thinking in my head right now how many different types of mixers and organizations that I went to, as many as I possibly could, especially as a student. The California Copyright Conference. I mean, I was I came from Steve Winograsky, who's like one of the grandfathers of that organization. I have to be there. I have to learn more about that side. The Association of Independent Music Publishers. What a great, like when we were able to go outside, what a great way to have lunch and like learn from everybody from our world about various topics. So then the Guild has been, why I keep talking about all these different organizations is, one, if you're hungry, you're going to have to invest some type of part of yourself. Either it's time, sometimes it is money somehow. You're not like paying your way through, but you're investing something in order to get in. And if you want to support your community, you also need to support the things that your community is about. So me supporting the Guild and me wanting to be a proponent of supporting the Guild, no matter what different company I'm in or whatnot, that's because I know what the music supervisors are going through based on getting feedback and having those connections with that community. and I want to support them. And so it's like we're showing our support for people more on a personal level sometimes, and the organization, because we really believe that this is something that needs to be done, and this organization is doing good work. So like, it's always a matter of like, you put your money where your mouth is as a company if you can. If you're able to afford that, then like you try to support any way you can. Even if you're just a friend of the guild, it's just showing that like, hey, I'm here, I'm listening to the concerns that you have. I'd love to learn more about your world. And it doesn't end by me getting a job. It ends when we're all doing things together and everybody is getting opportunities that they want, and we're all progressing together. So and yeah, and to touch on Lyric House, we're an independent company that has, like, I think we're at 300 different artists, writers, producers that we represent across the world. And we tackle all kinds of different media. We've been doing very well in trailer and promos in TV, video games, films, and when that comes back, we'll be back there, ads as well too. But we just do a lot of work, and we take a personal touch in really being one-on-one with our clients as best our ability, and trying to push people out there, and our team is very like hands-on. So we tackle a lot of things. Another reason why I joined is because we do very well in trailers, and I kind of fell into trailers, and I just love being on that part. And I love that community as well as like film and TV and everybody else. But yeah, so
you guys are launching
the biggest
something, right? Are you're saying?
Yeah, well, so I'm talking about all these different organizations and how you can participate. And the biggest part about being in those organizations and being at these different events is the real con of finding your way into an organization, into a industry, is like sneaking in and like pretending you're already in the industry, right? It's not like, it's not to say you're like fooling anybody. It's like, by investing your time and putting in that effort to just be amongst the community in any capacity, is showing that's like, I'm already here, I'm
in the room,
I'm not just, I'm in the room, and I care about this, and I'd love to learn more. This isn't, what are you going to do for me? It's, I want to learn more, and what I might have some talents and different skills. I want to help this community because I want to be a part of it. And so when people have that mentality, like everybody else on this panel, like, it shows, and people gravitate towards anyone that really wants it. Sometimes you work harder than others to get that attention, and that needs to be addressed, of course. But at the end of the day, if somebody truly hustles and finds their way with their own resources, there is a path. It's just not always very direct or, again, very easy. And you're always having that path. Like, even at where I'm at now, and where I know a lot of my other peers and colleagues are, we're all still struggling to make sure that we're deserving of whatever titles or whatever responsibilities that we're doing. We're always pushing to try to do better because we really want to be a part of this.
And you're launching a program, right?
So where I'm going with this is, it is hard to get into the industry, especially now, because there are none of these social things that you could like be in a room and bump into somebody and end up having a 2-hour conversation and like meeting either a lifelong friend or a future boss or somebody that's ready to open the door for you. And I know, like, this job I'm in now, there are 3 people in particular that have vouched for me personally to get me my job. And I realize that we need to do better to open those doors for anybody that's showing that interest. Yeah. So as a team, especially over the last few weeks, we've tried to talk about what we can do to help people break into the industry somehow as a professional. Like, if you want to, get your music synced and stuff like that, that's a separate thing. But professionals that want to get into the music industry and want to learn about what we do and are passionate and driven, we want to find a way to help people that, regardless of education, background, or experience, even if it's just a conversation, just to figure out who works best. But we're starting a mentorship program. We're still in like the early stages, but you can go on lyrichousecode.com, and under the contacts, it should show an email address.
Yep.
Send a cover letter and a resume. You don't worry about impressing. Just, I want to know where you're at, and tell us what you want to do in the industry. And if I can help, this program is for that reason. It's like, how can we get to connect with more people that are excited? Because at the end of the day, we all benefit from people that are just as excited and passionate about what we do as we are, to just help elevate anybody else get to where they want to go. And I can't tell you how many times someone else has helped me, and then I'll get a phone call from a friend or a colleague saying that they really believe in somebody else, and that you should hire them as an intern, you should consider them for a coordinator. And I consider that heavily, because I know what it took to take a chance on somebody, regardless if I personally knew them.
And someone took a chance subsequently on every single one of us, or multiple people, or whatever. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be in any striking position to do anything in this business. So it's super important to know that I've had some phenomenal mentors, and a lot of us have had the same mentors even, and they've just been like replicating that idea, but they're putting out like the next generation of people, essentially. And then now I think it's starting to become our job to kind of replicate that, because of the treatment we've been faced with,
So, and again, lyrichouse.co.com, just go under the contact section, and there should be the email address. I'm spacing because we just set it up. And the reason why you're going to send to that email address is so we can filter it and it's not lost. Because if you contact me directly.
On the chat, you've got a coordinator from Geo puts the details.
There you go. Yeah, Joe. Joe's coordinator at Lyric House. And another story of somebody that was recommended by a friend of mine that was an instructor at Cal Poly Pomona, and told me to consider her as an intern. And she did. She interned at Primary Wave. And from there, just seeing how badass she was, I had to call her when I jumped to Lyric House and asked if she wanted to intern and just like learn more. And all I said to her was, just help me out and I will do everything I can to find you a job. But then she ended up kicking ass anyways. I didn't have to do anything because the team wanted to hire her. So like, these things keep happening, and I just want to find a way to do that without having to worry about like, oh, well, as an intern, you'd have to get credit. It's like, we'll have internships too. That's fine. But the mentorship is what's really important, to show that if you really are interested, let's try it out. Even if it doesn't work out to be a part of the program, you're still going to get a phone call. You're still going to get some kind of engagement. That's our the thing that we're pushing ourselves to do, to make sure we're helping out somehow, even if it's just like a 15-minute conversation. That's more than what you might get right now, because there's no social interactions in person anymore. But yeah, so that's what we're working on right now.
Cool. So we have a little bit of time left. There's a couple things I want to touch on. I know there's a really, as you guys know, an active protest and movement for Black Lives Matter and diversity and inclusion in entertainment. And I know this is a topic that a lot of folks are eager to talk about, or eager to hear about. I want to take some time. I know we're supposed to end at 5. If folks want to stay on, I'm happy to go a little longer personally, and you guys can leave that up to your own discretion. But I do want to touch on this because I feel like, we have an obligation to talk about it. I think we have an obligation to hear from you guys, and I want to kick it off and just say, we want to hear maybe about a few things that you guys have maybe encountered along your journey, and then as well as ways forward that our generation and the current industry and the future generation can kind of move towards. So I want to start with Justin, because I think I haven't heard from you in a minute, and maybe Justin can kick it off and just talk about, maybe if you want to start on like ways forward or whatever you feel comfortable with, but just open to your discretion on that aspect of it. He's on mute. Sorry, Levi or Angela. You got it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, where do I even begin? Well, obviously I'm a Black male, so I have experienced in all areas of my life, no matter what industry or, what I'm doing. I've experienced some sort of discrimination or racism, things like that. But I've always, going into the entertainment industry, I always expected the entertainment industry to be held to a higher standard than most other industries, primarily because it's an industry across the board that digests Black influence and Black culture at such a high level. Mm. So when I am existing in these spaces, it's always been a concern for me that there's such an immense lack of representation and diversity in the room for an industry that surrounds itself on so many Black experiences and Black stories. Mm. So I think that, and obviously I'm not so much in sync anymore, but I do think that within the music studios, the music departments, film studios, across the board, I just think that if we're going to be telling these Black stories, we're going to be showcasing these Black experiences on screen, I think that, I'm not saying that they have to hire Black people for those films and those projects, but I do think that there needs to be a greater effort from these studios and these companies to invest in the Black communities that they are using stories from. If you're going to tell the story that is based around our culture, I feel like you should at least be interested or put forth effort in putting finances within our community, letting people of color know that these jobs are available and that these opportunities do exist. And I think that it's important to have more people of color in the room. I've noticed in all of my experiences that the best experiences across the board are the most diverse experiences and have the most diverse rooms. In each of those experiences that I've had, I found that when there's different types of people in the room, there's different stories, there's different backgrounds. For me, I studied classical voice, but I have a pretty good knowledge of Negro spirituals. So when I'm thinking about working on a project, or in the past when I was thinking about working on a project, I'm thinking that, oh, that's a particular experience that's connected to my culture and my roots as a Black person, sure, that I can provide in a room that somebody who's not from my culture and background will likely not understand. Sure. So I think it's important to have diversity in the room to provide different insight and different background. And I think that develops a better and more interesting project. Thank you
for actually getting the jump off too. I know it's a lot, and I know it's
I appreciate the question and the prompt. Like, it's definitely something that unfortunately has taken a while for the world to wake up to, but I know for a fact that people of color have been fighting for this forever, and the fight will continue, and better now than never. So
does anyone else want to kind of jump on that or backpack off that sentiment or thoughts?
I definitely want to speak to that. This is something that I've been having this conversation with other supervisors for years, especially this year, considering everything happening. I think that we have a lot of work to do. I think that there are a lot of super influential music supervisors on this call that I would pose a question to anytime that you have taken the job working on a Black show, working on Black music that you don't understand, that you don't really know about. I would ask you to have that conversation as to whether or not that's a job that you should be taking. I think that's a very real question to be asking, because through everybody's experiences that they've shared here today, we've talked a lot about how hard it is to get into this industry at all. Now you can only think about how hard it is for Black supervisors to get into it. And also, I can only speak to my experience for this. The shows that I worked on have predominantly Black music in it. I mean, you look at the charts right now, the last year of the 52 weeks in a year, 39 of those weeks on the charts, either the number one song was was a Black artist, was written by a Black songwriter, like 75%. We're talking 39 weeks out of the 50 weeks last year.
That's been the case since the 60s, the 50s,
so,
you know?
Yeah, and so the thing to really think about is, if it's this hard to get into this industry, if it's this hard to even, we're just now starting to see Black content in mainstream, not just niche to BET or, you know, somewhere else, you know, being othered. Those roles are so important for those to be, you know, Black music supervisors, for us to have an opportunity to represent ourselves, to be talking on, you know, speaking in these rooms. But how can we do that if the same directors are going to call the same supervisors? This is a very, you know, I struggle to have this conversation because some of the best opportunities I was given were from white supervisors. But the larger question is a systemic problem that we should talk about in film and TV, because we're not represented at the highest levels to even get those conversations going with the music supervisors who then take those jobs. I would also want to talk about, outside of the Black shows or the, you know, the Black music, the first show that I just talked about was One Tree Hill. Like, I would love to, you know, have Black supervisors that also get the opportunity to do other shows that aren't just about Black stories and Black, you know, Black music, because we deserve those opportunities as well. I think this is something that we should really, really think about, you know, taking those spaces where, especially if you don't have any interest in it. So that's what I would leave you with. I think this is a larger conversation. I definitely don't think it should be rushed. But that's just my 2 cents. I also know, you know, if you have the opportunity to be giving internships, one thing I would say is to strike the college credit, please, you know, for those amazing, talented young kids that may not have the financial means to go to college, to be able to have the college credit, you know, requirement to even get that internship that's probably going to be unpaid. Like, that's something to definitely think about as well. There's a lot, you know, and if you are, I've had so many allies reach out to me. I think some of them are listening now, you know, Rob Lowry, who's amazing, who does the Bold Type, he does, you know, Rami. And we were having this conversation. He was like, you know, what about how do I force a studio to hire Black? Because I could definitely turn down the job, and he's been amazing at doing that and recommending me for things and recommending other Black supervisors that he knows for things that he doesn't feel comfortable taking those roles. I think it takes a lot more than just him. And I know there are other people that are doing it. If you feel like you're in the position where you don't think the studio is going to listen to you and you decide to take the role, if you hire somebody Black to work with you, fight for equal billing, teach them the ropes, especially if they've never been afforded the opportunity, you know, somebody Black who has an amazing ear and has an amazing ear for putting it to screen, you can be a part of creating this amazing, you know, helping this network of Black supervisors as well. There's so many ways to do it. I think we just have to band together, actually make it happen.
Yeah. I guess maybe we could speak to being on the other side of the fence too, with being on the music production side or the management side, and maybe speak to those experiences or ways that you're finding struggles, et cetera, you know?
I would love to speak on this. Yeah, beautifully said, Justin and Rachelle. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of work to do. For me, in my personal experience, growing up, wanting to be in music, most of the time, artists, you know, the Black people I would see in the industry were the artists. And going into management and, you know, going on tour with my artists, I would show up to the venues often, and immediately the venue owner or the FOH would assume that I was the artist. And I'd have to say, no, I'm actually on management, you know? And I think it's about shifting that perspective for the industry as a whole, and specifically the people at the top who are kind of running this, to see Black people, Black women, you know, especially in more, you know, C-suite roles and management roles and higher up positions. And And I think it is going to come from the top. And so we have to have these conversations. But I also think what we can do for people that are up and coming, or people that are in entry level or even junior positions within your companies, is to start having these conversations. Mm-hmm. So yeah, having the conversations with the higher ups, finding out, you know, what they need in order to make that shift, in order to start hiring or start thinking about hiring more Black people, and filling their companies, you know, from the bottom to the top with Black people. And also, if you are up and coming, you know, and you are a Black, you know, woman or man in the industry that wants to get into this industry, don't give up. Keep putting yourself in those rooms, keep having those conversations. And when you get an opportunity to intern or to volunteer, I would always make it a point to do the job, do it really well. And then if there was time for me to go and introduce myself to someone or start a conversation with someone, you know, really learning from them, showing up, showing everyone that you're here, you're dedicated, you're willing to work, you're ready. You know, that's something we can all do from the bottom up.
Cool. I'd be remiss if I didn't chime in on this one as well. To kind of piggyback on what everybody else had so articulately stated, just in my own experience, I mean, it's always, it's inspiring and it feels amazing when you're able to see yourself in other people, figuratively and physically so. And in the sync music supervision, just the music industry, like Bree said, outside of the artist aspect and managerial roles, we don't get the opportunity to see an abundance of that. So I think now, you know, no time like the present, I can say it in pride, you know, the company I work for, APM, we have subdivisions in the diversity and inclusion program that we have where we're partnering with other organizations and looking to be part of that change. But it has to happen on every aspect. I mean, it's hiring Black composers, Black music supervisors, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I feel like this is a great time for the conversation to be had. I mean, obviously to get to this point, some things not so pretty had to be seen. And I feel like just with the efforts that everyone is taking on a collective basis, we are headed in the right direction. At least the conversation is being had. And I just want to thank you guys at the Guild for even opening up a platform like this for us to even speak on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say that, like, you know, it's definitely something that's been, you know, asked to us, and we've been getting a lot of feedback. And I know that we've launched a committee for diversity and inclusion, and we're looking for, again, folks that want to get involved in that. And I think Rachelle is muted, but yeah, so we're really looking to kind of like grow that as well. You know, I think all of us in the entertainment industry are in a learning place, and we all could stand to do more. We could all stand to grow more. A lot of times, you know, as a white male, like, you just kind of get comfortable in your day to day. You don't really, like, when it's not being brought up to you or exposed to you as much, you just kind of don't think about it as much. And so, like, it's great because it's being illuminated, and we're seeing a lot more, and we're hearing a lot more stories. And that's helped me personally. And I'm sure I can speak for others. I just wanted to ask if Jason wanted to say
Can I say one thing really quickly?
Sure.
As far as the supervisors and licensing people as well, I'd encourage you, considering Black music is literally like the founder of the majority of the genres, find Black artists that are in country, rock, punk, metal, all of these different shows, white supervisors that you're working on as well. Like, can you level out and make it equal among the artists that you're putting up so that they're not always white, you know, Black people in pop?
Yeah.
That would be
or in just hip hop, you know, like that's
like
stereotype, you know.
You know, like, we make everything. So can we see some of that equality and inclusion on the stuff that you're programming? Because, you know, I think music supervisors deserve so much more credit for breaking acts. Like, you guys have so much power in that, and who gets to hear and see, you know, those artists.
I just wanted to take it over to Jason. I know, I'm sure that you've experienced a lot in your time, you know, and wanted to see if you had anything that you wanted to add or touch on as well, you know.
Yeah. First off, I want to just double down on Rachelle's thing. Paid internships, please. Please do it. It's really biased towards people of privilege, and it really cuts off people who might not have ever, people have to work jobs. And if you're already working 2 full days of the week doing classes all day, and then you have to take 2 extra days being unpaid, it's really makes it hard for people who aren't legacy, students or getting in because their parents donated money and stuff. It just makes it harder for people with less resources to actually have those opportunities.
Yeah, I agree completely with that.
Yeah, and it's not something that I have to also own up to hypocrisy, because it's something that we're not doing over at our company, and it's something I probably should be fighting for more, and it probably will in the future. And then just kind of to add on to just what everybody else is saying, just want to kind of point out that diversity is great and everyone should kind of strive for diversity, but diversity also needs to come hand in hand with inclusivity. Unless you're giving everybody else that you're bringing in as people of color onto your team, but if you're not giving them the same resources and opportunities to grow and go up the ladder, then it's kind of meaningless. It just kind of becomes another checkbox on a thing that you do to make sure HR's happy. So I just kind of hope that we're all in a learning process right now. Me too, I'm always constantly trying to better myself on it. And I hope everyone's kind of taking stock of just how we can all do better as an industry. Looking at we're all pretty tolerant people here, and I don't think anyone here is intentionally evil, but invisible biases permeate through everything just because, it's just what we grew up with. We never thought about it. So I hope everyone just kind of takes the time, and same way that we all have to take harassment training and stuff, and it just becomes standard. I hope the industry will hopefully in the future adopt a way for all of us to kind of see those things that have been invisible, that have constantly kept other groups down or maybe out or felt like they shouldn't apply. I just learned recently that a lot of job applications use such masculine language that women sometimes just don't apply for those jobs because they don't think they apply. So there's small biases everywhere that we can all kind of work towards. And I just kind of hope we constantly remember it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, especially fixing this system, and that we'll all just kind of take it one day at a time, kind of hopefully take it seriously.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I just want to say thank you guys. I know it takes a lot to come out in front of people and talk about it, and it's huge. Applause all around. Thanks, Timo. So maybe I kind of want to close this out too in a way, and just talk about quickly. I know one of the burning questions of this whole thing is, for people making music and creating music, there's always a question on how do they get their music to you, or if you take submissions and solicitations. So I'll kick it off on my own and you guys can go from there. But personally, I'm always open to hearing stuff. I tend to try to keep my email traffic clear because it's a wild mess in my email. But if you guys want to reach out to me on Instagram, I am at can1live, and I just put it in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to me there. I try to, follow up with you guys. And if you guys want to speak to how you guys receive submissions or how, if that's even a thing that you guys do, I know you guys are inundated. So, and I know per corporate policy, a lot of times that's not allowed or acceptable. So, feel free to touch base. Garrett.
Sure. Well, first, I just want to thank Justin, Rachelle, Romero, Briana, and Jason for sharing all of that. I feel like those conversations I have and want to continue have, but I'm learning more even just on this call and how we communicate. So I just want to pledge my own commitment to that conversation and would love to continue those conversations with each of you individually, with anyone in this chat on those types of conversations. Just I hear everything you're saying, and I want to continue to be guided by you in helping make the right decisions as I grow within this industry, as I have trust within the company I work at and the opportunities that I am able to provide and doors that I can open. So thank you for all of your wise wisdom there and sharing your experiences and opening up about that. to answer the question here, I just didn't want to not acknowledge that, this is what I'm thinking in this moment, but to, speak to the conversation about musicians and people, looking to reach out and provide opportunities. It is a very challenging one because there's a large volume of people and a relatively small number, comparatively, of supervisors, and listening to individual and every single one coming in is challenging. There are record labels and publishers and close friends of mine that I struggle to keep up with their new releases and things of that sort. So I think I say all this to understand a little bit of the perspective in terms of how all of this is being ingested. Some recommendations I tend to make are, it is very effective to work with a sync licensing company, a sync agency, if you have that ability, if you can reach out to companies like a Lyric House, like if you're a composer, independent artist, maybe APM has opportunities. I know they have lots of bands with them. I know Peers signing lots of really great talent, both independent and small and bigger and more prominent, not to throw all of them and the submissions up, but there's a lot of companies out there that are working very hard to connect with supervisors, because on the end of supervision, it is much easier to have a conversation with, Jason, for example, about what he has with Peer, who's representing hundreds, thousands, maybe. I don't know.
Hundreds of thousands of songs in there.
Totally. So that is definitely I recommend reaching out to those companies, seek those opportunities. But with that, I say, make sure you understand the deals that you're signing. Make sure you understand the things that they're asking. There's some companies that are going to be very artist friendly and songwriter friendly. And there's going to be some companies that ask for things about ownership and splitting fees that you might not be comfortable with, and recognizing that can be problematic and challenging. So finding a partner that you feel comfortable and confident with, that you can really help your career excel and progress as you work together, that they're going to champion in you as a musician. Outside of that, there is the reaching out online. Hunter opened up his Instagram. That can be inundating. That can be really fun. I kind of explore lots of those routes. Sometimes, our company policies, we try to limit the amount of unsolicited submissions, mostly out of sheer volume and the time in our day that we're dedicating to our projects. But, we do see those emails and we do check them and try to connect, especially when we're working on projects that do focus on, different parts of the world and different music, and myself spend the time to reach out to those and don't discriminate if they're signed with a company or not, if they're independent and so forth. And really, as an artist, I think one really effective way to get on our radar is to treat your music and what you do as a business. If you need to be promoting online, if you need to be touring, right now it's kind of hard for that, but however your band or your music catalog is reflective of what you want to be doing, is to really take it seriously as a business and have all your information together, your publishing, samples, things like that. Make sure it's easy. Make sure you understand a little bit about the licensing process and terminology, some, examples of rights and things, making sure you understand what you're signing. Because again, if you're getting into a deal with Music Supervisor, you want to understand what rights you are signing, if the fee is a good fee for that. These are other things that sync agencies can help provide perspective on. There's some wonderful books that get into these things that can help you, that hopefully aren't too expensive. I know Amanda Creek Thomas wrote one called Thinking in Sync. It's $10 on Amazon. It's a digital book. It talks all about supervisors. It talks all about licensing companies and so forth. There's a number of other books that there's a book called Music Supervision, the second edition, Complete Guide to Selecting Music for Movies and TVs. That's a little more geared towards supervisors, maybe trying to get in that professional capacity. There's another book that I use in a class that I teach called Music, Money, and Success, that does gear a little bit to how to make money in this industry, but it has a lot of great examples of contracts and types of language and things that you should be familiar with. So there's a lot you can do that I would encourage you to continue on.
And Justin, what about you? How are you finding music? How are you kind of navigating that with your new role, or previously? How are people getting music to you?
Okay. Well, right now, so since I'm not in the sync space, I feel like I don't have people sending me music the way that I did when I was at Format. I feel like every day somebody was sending me something that I could check out. Yeah. So now it's truly mostly on my own. And I handle all the playlisting for bands globally at this point. So I kind of just do it on my own. I spend a lot of time just looking for new music, and specifically looking for like true up and coming acts that we can kind of help develop and grow with as they become bigger artists. Yeah, that's kind of the way that I've been doing it recently.
Sweet. And what about you, Bree? From a management perspective, how are people kind of getting their music to you, or what your management company is looking for, et cetera? You know, she's on mute. Sorry.
Okay, yes. So for our company, we're always accepting submissions. Right now, our roster, we have 3 on our roster. So we're quite busy, but definitely always accepting submissions. You can reach out to us on our Instagram at Helvetica Music, or reach out to me privately in the chat, and I will send you over my email. But yeah, we're always looking for new music, and especially with management, you never know. You could have a completely full roster and hear that one thing that you just can't deny. So we're definitely always open to hearing new music.
And I would say, from a corporate perspective, and for most people with COVID-19, I'm sure that you guys are very much invested in your current roster, and, you know, the livelihoods of their touring may be gone, or syncs aren't going to be as frequent. So maybe you guys could speak to that, on how you're navigating with the new COVID crisis, and, you know, maybe touch on how you would typically take submissions, or, you know, why right now is a time where you're kind of more focusing on probably your current roster.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, definitely our current roster is our focus, especially with COVID-19. And I think how we've kind of pivoted was, you know, really being open and listening to the environment of the industry right now. And obviously all of our tours were canceled, all of our shows, and there's really no end in sight for that yet. So instead, we've kind of tried to just focus our artists inward on their home studio. So they've been writing, and I think all of our artists now have at least 2 albums worth of music and content to, you know, so that when things do begin to open up and things start to go back to whatever the new normal is, they will be ready to, you know, ready with material, and ready to go.
Cool.
And I think, the difference, I think you touched on it, the difference of how we would accept submissions before. Yeah, of course, we're kind of tightening that up now, but again, always open to hearing new, great music.
And then with you guys on the publishing, library, and label side?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just wanted to chime in on the heels of what I think Garrett might have mentioned it. The company I work for, APM, we're home to, I would say, 160 libraries. So for all, you know, creators, composers, producers, singers, songwriters, that is an avenue that a lot of people, they aren't aware of. So, you know, definitely pitch music to libraries, and a lot of the libraries, they will, you know, they work with us in tandem. So that's another opportunity to continue obtaining sync placements and film, television, everything from a craft commercial to a feature film. So do your research on who the libraries are and who those libraries partner with. And a lot of the libraries right now, they're looking to beef up their hip hop and R&B catalogs. So I know that's, you know, a great pocket for a lot of creators. So just, you know, just do your research and don't dismiss that avenue as far as music placement as well.
Sweet. Patrick?
Yeah, I would like to very much echo doing your research. Doing your research is everything, and it applies to every part of this industry. And also what Garrett was saying about treating your music like a business. So yes, we take submissions. We have a submission section on our website, and we're always looking for new music. But when we get submissions, the ones that stand out are the ones that are like professionally packaged and sent out. That doesn't mean you're spending money to make it look a certain way. It's, do you have metadata? Do you have all the different splits? And like, we know where all the bodies are buried, to quote another supervisor that says that in emails a lot. Do we know every little aspect of your music? And are you doing research to show that like your music is finding a place in sync? Because the biggest part about what a supervisor does is servicing the actual project. It's not just what someone likes. It's, does that something that fits in that world of storytelling for that for that show or that project or that campaign? And so it's like, you know, come to us with things that you're excited about, that you're creating. We want to hear it all. But also, the more put together you are, the more easier it'll be for us to go through it, and for us to feel confident reaching out, knowing that you do control those rights. You did create this music, and it's just genuinely you that we want to be a part of. But yeah, so we are always looking, and we get feedback from our supervisors, our clients every day about what we should be focusing on, what kind of music we need. So there's never going to be a time where we don't, we're going to just stop looking for music. Like, we always need that. So
right.
Please check out the website and send, and we'd love to hear it.
Cool. Do you have anything to add, Jason? Or
I think Patrick said that perfectly.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's really just like an investment risk assessment from a corporate perspective. They're investing in your music to own a stake or all of the publishing, and they want to make sure that investment is not legally liable, and as well as from a supervisor perspective, that they're not taking on a song that they can't clear or is going to get them sued down the line on their production or something along those lines. So that's the idea. And if you can answer those questions and make sure that paper trail is solidified and make it an easier yes on the supervisor, you'll get an easier yes from the publishing or label or library bodies. So I think that about concludes it. I wanted to say thank you. I know we went over a little bit of time, so I want to say thank you to all who stayed with us. Does anyone else have any final remarks or anything that they want to say? Joel, say hi.
Yeah, I wanted to say this was an amazing panel. I'm really, really, really glad to stick around and hear what everybody had to say. There's such good energy with everybody who's here, and such great positivity about what's going on. When COVID first started hitting the community, we had to kind of circle the wagons and figure out what the hell was going on and what our future looked like. We started advising people about how to get unemployment insurance and apply for loans. And there was a lot of panic coming from not only from supervisors from the sync community about people who, musicians that we all love, who were suddenly out of work, had no ways to support themselves.
Also, venues are going out.
Yeah, everything. All the world that we love, is in flames in a lot of ways, not just because of COVID, but because of the entire situation, what's going on with the country.
Yeah.
And part of what we started talking about was those of us who are still working and still syncing and still using music and still able to hire musicians to really think about how we do it. There's after Katrina, I started a company down in New Orleans specifically to hire musicians, to encourage them to return home and to, give them employment, something that they can actually look forward to. And this is like a fucking worldwide version of that. So, if you have the power to hire somebody, hire a woman of color to come in and be your composer for you, look to, really go out there and see where, if you could spend some dollars, where it's going to do some real good. And not only to just, put food on somebody's plate, but change the way that we do business. It's a time for a real reset on all of the way we do business. It's a time where all the old, things, business as usual, can really fucking go out the window, and it's not going to happen by itself. So it really is beholden on all of the people who are in this community to look about how we could reshape this industry into something that looks more like us, that looks more like who we want this business to be. And I think that, we're still having this discussion, this guild, when Madonna Wade Reed and I decided to come on as president, vice president, it was a little bit like, crap, we don't want the extra work. We don't want necessarily have to do all this stuff because it's, again, a voluntary job. But at this time, it's a really exciting proposition that we can encourage people like yourselves to be involved, to come in and step forward and be involved with it and take charge. Madonna and I don't necessarily want to be the top-down leaders for this organization. We want to empower all the different committees to come forward and take a leadership role on their own for whatever part they want, and to really help make a positive change. Because Lord knows we don't necessarily know what's best. Yeah. We want other people who have better ideas to go ahead and lead. So, please volunteer, please get involved. We're doing our best because, again, we're making this shit up as we go. This organization started as with like maybe a dozen people over dinner 10 years ago. And, we now are fielding these great calls with, 800 people RSVPing to have a discussion. And there's a power in that. So use these platforms. We're not always going to be talking about, the most important things. We may be having fun and talking about, great jobs in music supervision that people do and stuff. But sometimes we'll be talking about some really serious things, and we should take advantage of those opportunities to have a dialogue and to make a positive change, because right now there's a great opportunity to blow shit up and to make it look like we want it to look when we come back to reality. So
I want to just say quickly, again, thank you. I think tomorrow we're doing a members only event. So if you're a member, you have received that details. If you're not a member, I suggest you join the Guild, because there's a lot of stuff that we do both in this capacity, but we do a lot of town halls and members only engagements. And, when we get back to reality, like mixers and our conference, we'll give a significant discount for that, as well as our awards show. So just be on the lookout. But the best way to get tuned in through our newsletter is by joining. And I think Angela's put in the membership link in the chat, as well as the Friends of the Guild link. So you can figure out what that applies to you. And, we look forward to kind of seeing you guys in person when we can all kind of do that again, which would be fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you for putting this all together. And thank you all the panelists for coming forward and sharing your stories. This was really cool.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone.